If you're creating content online today, you probably know the hardest part isn't coming up with ideas, it's turning those ideas into something people actually want to watch. You need characters that stay consistent, locations that feel believable, camera movements that look cinematic, and somehow every scene has to connect into one story instead of feeling like random AI clips. That's usually where AI video starts falling apart. Every new prompt feels like starting over. Different characters, different lighting, different styles. So today I want to see if one AI workflow can actually solve that problem. This is Story Studio inside Pippit powered by the new Seedance 2.5 model. Instead of generating one clip at a time, it's designed to help creators build an entire story from beginning to end inside one creative workflow. Let's see if it can actually do it. Before we generate anything, let's start with the story. I already have a simple idea, a fantasy drama about a princess who discovers that someone inside the royal palace has betrayed her kingdom. Normally, I'd have to break that idea into dozens of prompts, design every character separately, create environments one by one, then somehow keep everything consistent. Instead, I paste the story into Story Studio. Within seconds, it reads the entire script. It identifies the main characters, extracts the locations, builds the scene structure, and prepares everything for production automatically. Instead of spending hours organizing assets, Story Studio turns my rough idea into a complete production plan. But this is only the beginning. The real creative work happens inside Canvas. This is where Story Studio becomes really interesting. Instead of jumping between different AI tools, every part of my project lives inside one visual workspace called Canvas. Think of it less like writing prompts and more like directing a film. My princess becomes a reusable character. The palace becomes a reusable location. Every environment, every costume, every camera reference, every lighting style lives inside the same project. So instead of describing everything again every time I generate a scene, I simply connect the pieces together. I drag my princess into the palace. At the opening scene, choose the atmosphere I want. Then connect everything into the story. Canvas already understands which character belongs in which environment. That means every new scene starts from the same creative foundation. One feature I really like is that if I decide to change something later, I don't have to rebuild the entire project. Let's say my princess needs different clothing, or I want to redesign the palace, or maybe I decide the villain should look older. I simply update that asset inside Canvas. Every future scene automatically uses the updated version. Instead of fixing every generation individually, I'm editing the production itself. That's a completely different workflow from most AI video tools. You're not generating disconnected clips anymore, you're building a production pipeline. Now it's time to generate the first scene. This is where Seedance 2.5 takes over. Instead of producing another 5-second AI clip, it can generate cinematic shots up to 30 seconds long that changes everything. Longer shots mean characters have time to move naturally. The camera can slowly follow the action. The story has room to breathe instead of jumping from one cut to another every few seconds. For my opening scene, I generate a slow cinematic shot of the princess walking through the palace while guards watch from a distance. The camera drifts through the hallway as sunlight pours through the windows. Instead of feeling like separate images stitched together, it already feels like the opening scene of a movie, and that's only the beginning. Because Cedence isn't just generating longer videos, it also gives me much more control over how every scene unfolds. One of the biggest frustrations with AI video is that you're never quite sure what the model is going to do. You write a prompt, click generate, and hope the scene unfolds the way you imagined. Seedance 2.5 gives you much more control than that. Instead of describing an entire scene in one paragraph, I can direct exactly what happens throughout the shot. For example, at the beginning of the scene, I want the princess slowly walking through the palace corridor. A few seconds later, the camera begins circling around her as she notices something unusual. Then the hallway grows darker, lightning flashes through the windows. Finally, the camera pushes toward the throne room doors just before they're opened. Instead of hoping the AI understands the pacing, I can define how the scene evolves over time. It feels much less like writing prompts and much more like directing a real production. Another thing I always struggle with when creating AI video is consistency. You generate one amazing shot, then the next scene suddenly looks like it belongs in a completely different movie, different colors, different lighting, even the characters sometimes look like completely different people. Canville solves a lot of that problem because everything comes from the same creative workspace, every character, Every location, every visual reference, every scene shares the same production assets. So when I move from the palace hallway to the throne room, then to the final confrontation, nothing feels disconnected. The princess still looks the same, the palace architecture matches, the lighting style stays consistent, even the overall atmosphere feels like one continuous production instead of separate AI generations stitched together. For anyone trying to tell a complete story, that's a huge advantage. Something else I really like is how Canvas helps you build scenes before you even generate them. Instead of relying on a single prompt, I can collect multiple creative references inside the project. Maybe I like the lighting from one scene, the composition from another, the camera movement from a third, the architecture from a fantasy movie. Canvas lets me combine those ideas together into one creative direction. So instead of starting every generation from scratch, Cedence already understands the visual language I'm aiming for. That means every new scene feels intentional, not random. It's almost like building your own production Bible before filming begins. One feature I found especially useful is what happens when a scene ends. Normally, if an AI clip stops too early, you have to regenerate the entire sequence and hope it looks the same. But with Seedance 2.5, I can simply continue the shot. The characters stay consistent, the camera movement keeps flowing naturally, the lighting doesn't suddenly change. So instead of rebuilding the scene from scratch, I can extend it and keep the story moving forward. That makes longer storytelling much easier because you're not constantly restarting every sequence. Now everything is ready. The characters have been created, the environments are consistent, every scene has been generated, and the entire story has stayed inside one project from beginning to end. The last step is simply putting everything together. I arrange the scenes in order, add music, sound effects, and a few final edits.
Late one afternoon, I walked through the grand corridors of our palace. Something felt wrong. The guards were behaving strangely. As I approached the throne room, a violent storm broke out. The palace grew unusually quiet. Inside, I saw Lord Vile, my father's trusted advisor, secretly meeting with enemy soldiers. He was planning to open the gates. Suddenly, he turned. He saw me watching him. I ran. Enemy soldiers were already entering the castle. I had to stop them. You will not destroy my kingdom, Vale.
It is already too late, Princess.
I stood before the throne, determined to protect my home, no matter the cost.
What started as a simple idea has become a complete cinematic short film. What impressed me most isn't just the visual quality, it's how organized the entire process feels. Instead of jumping between multiple AI tools, every stage of production happens inside one workflow. Story planning, character creation, scene organization, visual references, video generation, everything stays connected. After using Story Studio together with Canvas and Seedance 2.5, I think the biggest improvement isn't simply generating better AI videos, it's having a workflow that actually feels built for storytelling. Story Studio helps turn a rough idea into a structured production. Canvas keeps every character, location, and creative reference organized so your story stays consistent from beginning to end. Then Seedance 2.5 brings everything to life with cinematic long takes, detailed camera control, and tools that give you much more creative control over every scene. Instead of fighting the AI, it feels like you're directing it. If you've ever wanted to create your own AI short films, cinematic trailers, or animated stories, I'll leave a link to Pippit Story Studio in the description below. Let me know what kind of story you'd create first. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.